this is the first video that you are going to be watching online, and because of that, I want to give you some instructions. Each time you watch one of these videos to take notes, I need you to pay very close attention to putting each part of the notes in the correct place in the interactive notebook. So if I say put the date and the page number in a certain place, please make sure you put it there. If I say put this title on this page, please do not summarize or paraphrase or shorten the title, because when I go to grade your interactive notebooks, I'm going to need to make sure that everything is easy for me to find, because I'm going to have a lot of these to grade. So for my sake and for your grade, make sure you put everything in the correct place. If you did not set up this page in class today, this is going to be page number 3. Make sure you put the date, August 29th, 2013. And as always, your page number and your date need to go on the outside corner. Do not put it right by the spirals, put it on the outside corner. So our title is Adding and Subtracting Fractions. Our objective is I can add and subtract fractions without a calculator, and I can graph this addition and subtraction on a number line. It's very important that you can do this without a calculator, because you're going to be expected on future tests, like major end-of-year tests, to be able to do things without the fancy calculator that you're used to using. So that's why the emphasis this time is so much on not using a calculator. I might suggest that you pause this video now. If you need to finish writing, feel free to pause, rewind, rewatch anything in this video to make sure you get all the notes down, because I will be moving quickly. All right, on this same page, we need to get some vocabulary taken care of before you can actually start adding and subtracting fractions. And that vocabulary that we have to take care of is least common multiple. Now, I am fairly certain that all of you have done something with least common multiple at some point in your life, but you might need a quick refresher. So least common multiple, if for example we are finding the least common multiple of 3 and 8, what we need to do first is make a list of the multiples of each number. So I'm going to take my 3. I like to write it, the 3 with a little arrow afterwards, and then I start my list. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 1, 4, 7, 30, and on and on and on. Once you get to the end of the row, you probably won't need to go much further than that, but I would get as many multiples as you can fit on one row. Then I go make my multiples of the number 8. That's going to give me 8. 16, 24. Now, if you're paying attention to what you're doing, you should notice at this point that you have a number that is the same on both lines. This is your goal. You need to find the lowest number that is a multiple of both 3 and 8. So, once you find it, that is your LCM. Simple as that. All right, moving on to the next topic. On the bottom half, nope, sorry, that was wrong. On the next page, go to page 4, add your page number and your date outside top corner. And the title for this page is Adding and Subtracting Fractions with Notes. Okay, go ahead and write notes so you know what's on this particular page. I'm going to go through these very quickly. Once again, pause so you can write it all down in your notebook. Some of these notes might not make sense until you actually work through an example, so just hang tight, we'll get there, and you will understand by the time we're done. So the very first step in adding and subtracting fractions, there it is. If either of your fractions is a mixed number, you're going to change each fraction to an improper fraction. And I'll show you how to do that if you've forgotten when we get to an example. Notice this part in parentheses. If your number is not a mixed number, you can skip step 1. If it is a mixed number, you have to do step 1. So get that written down in your notebook. Step number 2, if the two denominators are different, you need to find a common denominator by finding the LCM of the two denominators. LCM is least common multiple. That's what we just did on the previous page. Your third step in adding and subtracting fractions is to change the fractions so they have the same denominator, and you do this by multiplying the top and bottom of the fraction by the same number. This step right here is the step that usually mixes most people up. They really struggle with it. Most of my students can turn something into an improper fraction. Most of my students can find an LCM. Most of my students have difficulty with step number 3. When we go through the examples, I'm going to show you several examples of this step number 3 so that you are really, really clear on how to do it. That's the most important skill. Step number 4, you are going to add or subtract, whichever the problem is, the numerator and keep the denominator the same. Just a reminder, if you have forgotten, the numerator is the top number and the denominator is the bottom number. You need to be familiar with those vocabulary because when you take a test or a quiz or do a project, it's going to be described as numerator and denominator, not top and bottom. And the final step is simplify. You won't always have to do that step, but if you need to simplify, simplify. You will get the answer wrong if you don't simplify. Okay? Pause it, write down the steps if you need to. On the same page, the bottom half of that page, we are going to work through our first example. So please write example 1 about halfway down and write same denominator. Might not be a bad idea to highlight or write this in a different color. So my example problem for two fractions that have the same denominator, why don't we go ahead and do 3/8 minus 2/8. Now, some of you might think this is incredibly easy. It might be, but let's work through the steps to make sure we understand. Step number 1. Do I have any mixed numbers that need to be changed into improper fractions? Think about it. Hopefully you answered no. These are both regular fractions. They're not mixed numbers, so we're good to go. Step number 2. If the denominators are different, find the LCM of the denominators. Are my denominators different? Once again, I hope you said no. They are the same. Step number 3 we can skip. That's about changing the denominators until they are common denominators. So we can skip that step too. We don't even start this problem until step 4. Step 4 says subtract or add the numerators and keep the denominator the same. So if I look at my numerators, I have 3 minus 2. That's going to give me 1. And I have 8 on my denominator. Do not subtract the denominator. Keep the denominator exactly the same. So my answer here is just 1/8. That's it, guys. Don't make it more complicated than it is. Next, let's move on to our second example. This, I think you'll probably need to go on to page 5 for, so why don't we do that now? Page 5, August 29th, 2013. Write it in the outside top corner. And our second example deals with different denominators. So, if I have two fractions with different denominators, why don't we go ahead and do 7/9 plus, how about 3/5? Okay? My denominators are 9 and 5, so I'm going to have to take care of that at some point. But let's think about step number 1. Change mixed numbers to improper fractions. I don't have any mixed numbers, so I can skip step 1. Step 2. Find the LCM of your different denominators. That we do need to do. So, as we talked about a couple pages ago, you need to make lists of each number. So the numbers that I'm looking to find a common multiple of are 9 and 5. So, if I start listing multiples of 9, I have 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, 63, and I'm pretty much out of room at this point. I'll start listing multiples of 5, 5, 10. Remember, I'm keeping an eye out for when I have a number that's the same on both lists. So far, I don't have it. 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. And now I have it. I have numbers that are on both lists. That would be 45. So my LCM, in this case, equals 45. That's step 2. Remember how I said step 3 was the hardest step for most of my students. It's not that complicated, but for some reason it mixes everybody up. When you start step 3, I want you to start by rewriting your original fractions. And now what we need to do is we need to get these denominators to both be 45, because that's our least common multiple. So my question for you is, if I want to make 9, if I want to turn that into a 45, how am I going to do it? And this just requires that you know your basic math facts. To get from 9 to 45, I know, because I've been doing math forever, that you have to multiply by 5. Now here's the trick that you cannot forget when you're doing fractions. Whatever you do to the bottom of the fraction, you have to do the same thing to the top. Okay, so that's how you start step 3. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side. I need to turn 5 into 45. So I think in my head and I ask myself, what number multiplied by 5 is going to give me 45? And I know that it's going to be 5 times 9. Times 9 there. Okay? Notice that really I'm just multiplying my two denominators, 9 and 5, with each other. That's not always going to be the case. But in this case, that's what it is. And then I'm just going to actually do this multiplication. So my first fraction here, 5 times 7 is 35. And 5 times 9 is 45. That gives me my first fraction. Over on the right-hand fraction, I have 3 times 9, which is 27. And then I have 45. You with me so far? That is step 3. Step 4. Add the numerators, keep the denominators the same. So I need to do 35 plus 27. I'll go ahead and just do some scratch work over here on the side. Remember, no calculators. 35 plus 27 is 62. And I keep my denominators the same, which makes it 45. Step 5. Don't forget, guys, pause and go back if you are confused. Step 5 says to simplify. And in this case, I have an improper fraction. I think the best thing for me to do first would be to turn this improper fraction into a mixed number. The way you're going to do that, look at your denominator. How many times does 45 go into 62? Hopefully that's pretty simple for you. It goes in once. That's going to be the whole number of my mixed number. Then I'm going to take 45 out of 62. So I'm going to find out how much is left. 62 minus 45. So it's kind of like the remainder after 45 goes into 62 once. And what I'm going to end up with is 17. So my answer is going to be 1 and 17 45ths. That is my final answer. Put a box around it. You are done. The final example from fractions is going to be an example starting with mixed numbers. And this is the one that's going to use every single step from the notes that you